Welcome to the February 2nd regular meeting of the Board of Education. If you would join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We thank you all for being here this evening, and our first item on the agenda is our student board member report. We have Joseph Rodriguez here to give us our student board member report.
Hi. Good evening, everyone. My name is Joseph Rodriguez. I'm a senior at Novi High School, and I'm here to just give you all a quick update on how our school is doing. So first off, I would like to say sorry to all of you guys for the lack of high school representation, for student representation on the board last meeting. I assume full responsibility. That's my fault, lack of communication. So I apologize for any inconvenience to you all for the last meeting. With that, we'll keep on going. On February 11th, Novi High School will be hosting an ACT for the juniors, busy time of the year, for all students around Novi. Looking at our events, we have a dance concert that took place on 24th of January. And there was on the next day, the January 25th, the class of 2021 had their parent information meeting. We have a public play performance. It's a one-act play, and it'll be taking place on February 7th and 8th. That's a Tuesday and Wednesday at 7 p.m. The choir cabaret concert is taking place on Monday, February 13th at 7 p.m. in the auditorium. Speaking of Novi Choir, last weekend, the Novi Acapella went to Ann Arbor, and they competed in the quarterfinals, and they took first place, and they will be competing in Bowling Green on March 18th for semifinals. So exciting news for them. On the same note, the band, our Novi band, went to Grand Rapids for the Michigan Music Conference, and they performed a concert there, as well as serving as a model band for schools and students across the state, and they were directed under Professor Robert Reynolds. Moving on, DECA performed in the second week of January, and DECA is a business club. They competed at the district competition at Lakeland High School, and out of the 133 members, 102 made it to the state competition in Traverse City in March. So congratulations to them. Moving into our athletics, congratulations to Erin O'Leary. She got the Gator Player of the Year for the state of Michigan. With collegiate athletes coming of time, 7 students signed yesterday for National Sign Day, and they pledged to commit to a university for sports. So we had representation from football, soccer, and swimming yesterday for National Sign Day. Congratulations to Novi Wrestling. They won the Central Division of KLAA by beating Northville last week. Last night, unfortunately, though, they lost in a meet against Walled Lake Central, John Glenn, and Heartland, and they will be competing in districts on Saturday, February 11th. Also, congratulations to girls' figure skating team. They competed on Monday, January 16th, and their A, B, and C teams received 4th, and 3rd, respectively, and they will be competing again this Monday, February 6th. The Novi boys varsity basketball defeated South Lyon East, putting them with a 7-0 record in their conference, and they will play South Lyon at home tomorrow and Northville next Friday. Swimming is hosting against Salem tonight in their last home meet. So good luck to them, and Novi is bustling with activity and many, many big things happening for our students, our student athletes, and all our activities going on. So thank you guys.
Do we have any comments or questions for Joseph from the board? Thank you. Lots of great stuff going on for sure. I'll just say that the one-act play I've heard is very good. It's called Wiley and the Hairy Man, which does sound interesting. My daughter's actually the hairy man in it. I haven't seen it yet, so I'm not going to say, wow, you must go, because... Anyways, thank you very much, and we look forward to hearing more from the high school about some of those events that you said are upcoming that they'll be attending, the DECA group and stuff. Thank you. Okay, well, moving on, we have our next opportunity is for comments from the audience on any item related to our agenda this evening. If we have anyone that would like to come to the podium. We do not. Seeing none, we will go on to Michigan, or to our reports to the board. Dr. Matthews.
Thank you, Ms. Murphy. Tonight, I would like to present a report on the state scorecards. On January 20th, 2017, the Michigan Department of Education released the Michigan School Scorecards. Tonight, I would like to give the board and our community a broad overview of the scorecards and what they mean for our district. The Michigan State scorecards combine data from three sources: student assessment data, in this case the MSTEP, our state assessment, participation rates in these exams, and information on compliance with state and federal laws. This data is then combined to produce one rating or ranking of a school. The state assessment data is disaggregated, meaning that participation and proficiency rates are set for subgroups within the school and district. The more diverse a district or school, the more potential subgroups and the more potential scores to be considered. Typically, a subgroup is counted if they have more than 30 students in that subgroup. And as you can see, there are 13 potential subgroups to be considered. Each school and district receive individual proficiency targets. These targets are based on previous year's performance. Additionally, depending on the school and its level, schools may have targets for science and social studies, as well as English, language arts, and math. As you can see when looking at our district and 4 schools, no proficiency target is the same. This has both positive and negative elements. The positive is that a district or a school has an individual performance goal. So for districts like Novi that typically score well, our proficiency target is not a generic target, but a target that is specifically based on our past performance. The negative is that this individual performance target hides the actual true performance of a school or district when it is compared to other schools. So what do I mean? Novi is rated a yellow district. There are school districts in Oakland County that are rated lime or green, yet when you compare the individual targets of Novi and higher rated districts on this scorecard, you will find that Novi has higher proficiency targets, higher achievement, and higher performance, and yet on the state school scorecard, we are rated lower. Here is an individual school's sample. This school has, as you can see, the possibility of earning 60 total points. They earned 30 total points, and as a result, this school was rated orange, even though they had very high achievement. And one of the reasons that this school did not score well is that some of those red boxes, they had more red boxes than another school that we'll look at in a second, so meaning that they were more diverse, they had more opportunity to have subgroup scores, and because they had additional subgroup scores, those scores in this case counted against them. So you will see here, this is that school's proficiency targets. Their proficiency target was 73%. And you will note that every subgroup has the same proficiency target. So, for example, the students in the bottom 30%, every school has a bottom 30%, no matter how high your proficiency is. This school, the proficiency target for the students in the bottom 30% is the same as the proficiency target for all students, even though it's labeled bottom 30%. And so, but you can see the students in this school's bottom 30% scored at their percent proficient was 53%. Now there are other schools within Oakland County that have a lower proficiency target, and as a result, students in their bottom 30% may actually score, meet that proficiency target, even though it's lower than the proficiency target in Novi, and as a result, they end up scoring higher when the rankings are given out. The next example is a school that only had 22 possible points. The school that we just looked at had 60 possible points. This school has 22 possible points, so they earned 16 out of a possible 22. And why did they have fewer points? A couple of reasons. One, they didn't have social studies scores that they had to consider, and also they had significantly fewer subgroups than the other school. And as a result, one of the reasons this school scored as a Lyme rating. And you will note their unique school proficiency target. The school we previously looked at had a proficiency target of 73%. This school has a proficiency target of 68%. And as I said earlier, the individual school and district proficiency targets have an upside and a downside, meaning that the upside is that the score is specific to your school. In other words, the target is specific for your students based on their past achievement. The negative is that if you don't hit that target, even though it's a higher target than other schools, you'll be rated down because you didn't hit the target. The next slide identifies the proficiency rates, or the participation rates, and you will note that this is you either hit the participation rate or didn't hit the participation rate, and the participation rate is 95%. You have to have 95% of your students in any subgroup. If a subgroup's counted, you had to have 95% of the students in that subgroup test, or you would not get credit. And if you didn't get credit, one missed box in here would be enough to knock you out of a good rating here. So you can see all the multiple boxes, the potential multiple boxes. And again, these are the two schools compared side by side. You will see that one school had significantly more boxes to make sure that they had all their targets met than the other school did. And then finally, there are the other factors that are considered, the compliance factors. Is the school improvement plan completed? Is your Ed Yes report completed? Attendance, they have attendance targets. The target is 90%, and you can see this particular school had 97% attendance. If this school was not a high school, the high school would not have an attendance target. They would have a graduation rate target. And so this was either an elementary building or a middle school. And then on the educator evaluations, the TSDL, student inclusion rate, means were all the teachers highly qualified to teach what they were teaching, and could every student in those classes be linked to a teacher who was highly qualified. And so in this particular school, 100% of the students were taught by a teacher who was highly qualified, and 100% of the students could be linked to one of those teachers. And then the final factor there is an effectiveness label. So the state has 4 effectiveness labels: highly effective, effective, minimally effective, and ineffective. And so did every teacher receive one of those ratings? And in this particular school, you can see that all of them did. What all of that data gets you is a dashboard. And here are 2 examples of the dashboards. You can see one school got the 5 colors that you have go from green, lime, yellow, orange, and red. Green is the best, red is the worst. And so you can see the first dashboard that's provided for you there. The school scored in the lime range. You can also see that they had 20 out of 26 total points for 76%. And their overall school rating was in the 95th percentile, meaning they were better than or equal to 95% of the students or the schools in the state of Michigan when you compare them to schools in the state of Michigan. But you can also see that there are some significant achievement gaps within that school because their achievement gap ranking was at the 6th percentile. The second school had a scorecard status of orange. And they had 38 out of 68 points, and yet their overall school ranking was the 96th percentile, and their achievement gap ranking was slightly better than the school that scored in the Lime category. These are the scorecards for the Novi schools.
Steve,
Yes.
I'm sorry to stop you, but that reward out there
Mm-hmm.
on the side?
That means that school was rated as a reward school.
Okay.
The state still ranks schools reward or focus or priority. Reward meaning that you're in the top 5% of all schools in the state of Michigan.
Right.
So that school, even though it was rated orange, was a reward school, meaning that it was in the top 5% of all schools in the state of Michigan.
What, is there a reason that the one above it would not have had that? It's just out to the side.
No, it's not out to the side. They
Oh.
were not ranked a reward school.
Even though they're
lying.
Lyme?
Even though they're Lyme, according to the
Okay.
state of Michigan.
Okay, sorry.
Ms. Klebzinski.
Yeah. The achievement gap ranking, you just said the higher the percent, the better.
Yes.
Can you explain what that means?
The achievement gap ranking looks at the subgroups, looks at the difference in achievement within those subgroup populations, and the higher the score, it means that the achievement gap is less. So a low score means the achievement gap is high between the subgroups.
Okay, so when that shows on a 10, it doesn't mean
It doesn't mean
10% of the.
No,
Okay.
no.
Yep. Thank you.
So here are the scorecards for Novi schools. You can see we have primarily yellow, one orange school, the middle school, and yet the middle school is a reward school, I might add. And we have one Lime school. In Orchard Hills is the Lime school, and it is not a reward school, surprisingly. But the most important slide, perhaps, is the last slide for you. These are the top to bottom rankings from the state of Michigan. The state of Michigan, because of federal education policy, is required to create a top to bottom list ranking all schools from the highest achieving to the lowest achieving. There are approximately 2,800 schools that are ranked in the state of Michigan, and you will see that we are in the top 5% of schools in the state of Michigan. Every one of our schools is in the top 5% of schools in the state of Michigan, and we have 4 reward schools. And so, and you can see our achievement gap percentile rank. Novi Woods is the best in reducing the achievement gap, and that ranges. Now, quite frankly, achievement gap is clearly influenced by the number of subgroups you have as well. And so the fewer the subgroups, the more likely it is that your achievement gap ranking will be higher because you don't have as many subgroups to compare to. But having said that, the statewide percentile rank shows that every one of our schools is in the 95th percentile or higher. And tomorrow in the weekly update that I provide you, I will compare this year's top to bottom ranking with the rankings that we received my first year here in Novi, and our rankings are significantly better than they were 5 years ago, and that's a result of the hard work that our teachers and our parents and students have done, and also the tremendous work that has come out of the Office of Academics and Dr. Weber. So that will be a coming attraction that you will have tomorrow in the weekly report. So any questions on the state scorecards?
Mrs. Klebzinski?
So is this dashboard what we have to have on our website?
Currently, we do not have to have that on our website. There is some discussion that you need that the state is going to require that, but if you go to the Michigan school data, they don't provide that specific information. They provide all of that information, but not in that dashboard form. So the state of Michigan has provided it for every school in the state of Michigan.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Other questions or comments?
Well, can I just back that up one more? Sorry. So we are not required by law to have anything related to this on our website, even not if you take away the dashboard.
I don't believe we are.
No, they're just the AERs on there.
We have to have our the annual
education
education report. which we do, which provides all of the data, the individual assessment data, not of individual students, but of
Right.
the third grade, the fourth grade, that kind of thing per
Okay.
school. But we're not required at this point to have a dashboard.
Got it.
One thing to keep in mind as you look to the future, the state superintendent is trying to replace the color-coded system with a letter grading system. Part of me says that letter grades would be easier to understand, but another part of me says they would still, if you have bad data going in, you still have bad data coming out. And so, to argue that we're a C school, if yellow is if green is A and red is F and yellow in the middle is a C, somebody might say, well, you're just average school. But when you look at the actual data, our achievement, because we have such high achievement, we have high targets to reach. But to say that a school there is a charter school within the city of Novi that's rated gets a green label. That charter school has no subgroups, has had very few students in the calculation, and for the state to suggest that school is better than Novi High School, I think is quite frankly a fraud. It is not communicating accurate information. Because when you look at this data, you can see that our scores, we're better than or equal to 95% of the schools in the state of Michigan. And so our achievement, our students, I would measure against anyone in the state of Michigan. I think Mr. Rodriguez had a question.
Mr. Rodriguez.
Sorry, just a quick question. I saw that Novi High School ranked 96, but it also ranks 5th for achievement gap. So in the 5th percentile, means 95% of the schools have a higher.
Correct.
Yeah. So are there has there been any possible solutions or initiatives? I know we looked.
That's a great question.
It is a great question.
I know
Elect
that
him to the school board.
Ms. Carter pushed the power of I
Yep.
believe.
Yep.
So was that a possible way to curb?
Yep,
this?
that's one of the ways.
We have a
we're-
comprehensive approach to
I'll let Dr. Weber jump in.
intervention as well at the high school this year on the push-in portion of it. So that's the magic of this work is it's kind of like a golf in some ways that you can always improve, you can always get significantly better, and you're trying to find that combination to get better. And you're also working with human beings, right? Children like yourself, and trying to provide every opportunity for our kids to learn and to have that opportunity to be better, to get better. So great question, and that's really what drives us and the four of us up here in central office really is every single day what we think about is how can we better serve our kids. And the way I look at it in my head is like a door, and that door's got 30 combination locks on it, right? And the job that we all have in the school district, the board, the teachers, the administrators, parents as well, is how to hit every one of those combinations so we can help you guys open the door. And it's not any one thing, which is what makes it difficult. To the point of what Dr. Matthews said about school report cards as well, A through F sounds very simple and very straightforward, but anybody who has had children will know that teachers, what constitutes that A, B, C, D, E, or F can be very different depending on the teacher you have and depending on how those grades are derived. So as Dr. Matthews did a great job of showing you the complexity in our current system, how the A, B, C, D, and F is derived is really, that detail is really where the difficulty comes. And as Dr. Matthews said, if all of our schools are above the 95th percentile, yet we have an orange school, or we became a C school district for some outlying piece of data that somebody might not be able to see or know about, it's important that we tell our story and what we have. And the last slide, actually, Dr. Matthews, the second to last slide. That slide right there is the slide that when you look at it and you see how our schools and how our kids and how our teachers stack up across the entire state of Michigan. Dr. Matthews, how many public school districts are there in Michigan?
There's about 560 school districts, another 200 plus charter schools. There's about 2,800 schools on this list that we were.
Did he tell you he was going to ask you that
He did
question
not.
before?
No, we work together. We communicate. It's good.
800. So 2,800
Yeah.
schools.
So, to kind of jump on what Dr. Weber was saying, our attendance rate, the one I showed you, the school had a 97% attendance rate. There are schools in the state of Michigan that have a significantly lower attendance rate than that. And the question is, whose fault is it? Is it the school's fault, or is it the parents' fault? Is it a combination? A school could be doing everything right, and if the parents aren't going to get their kids up and dressed and fed and in the car and to school or to the bus stop, is that the school's responsibility, or is that the parents' responsibility? And so on a report card, it's easy to say you need to have 90% daily attendance, but if you as a school are doing everything right, sending letters home, calling home, doing home visits perhaps even, and still those students can't get to school, does it become your responsibility then to set your alarm, to go to that house, to wake up the family, to feed the child, to dress the child, to bring the child to school? So on attendance, how do you grade attendance? It's easy to grade attendance by counting the noses in desks in front of you. And in that regard, we do very well. And why do we do so well? Well, one of the reasons we do well is we have compelling schools that kids want to be at. But the other side of that coin is we have parents who care deeply, who don't have to work 2 or 3 jobs, who have reliable transportation, who have the financial means to make sure that kids are fed and dressed and out the door and standing at the bus stop or driving them to school. And so it's easy to say 90% of students should be in school every day. And yet, if they're not, whose responsibility is that? The state says it's totally on the school. And in some ways, that's just not fair. Mr. Rodriguez asked a good question. There's an author who happens to be a medical doctor that I read frequently. His name is Atul Gawande. And he wrote an article for the New Yorker recently that talks about the heroic nature of incremental care, is what the title of it was. Meaning, he's a surgeon, so he gets to do the exciting things. He gets to go in and, if somebody comes in with a burst appendix, he gets to go in and remove the burst appendix, and the person gets better. But he said that the real efficacy of medicine is that doctor that establishes a relationship with the patient and over time helps that patient change their behavior so that they'll live a healthier life. That's hard work. It takes a lot of investment. It doesn't result in miraculous change overnight. And yet he said those are the factors that are going to determine if that person lives a long life. It's not only the surgeon who gets to do the exciting, miraculous, life-saving things once in a while. It's the person who actually develops that relationship with the patient. And that's what we have in school. We have teachers who develop relationships with patients, and over time, they're going to make a difference with that child. It may not show up in first grade or second grade or third grade, but over time, if they've developed that relationship, then achievement gaps will close, students will get better, and we will be successful. The other, issue that we have in Novi High School that Mr. Rodriguez is quite familiar with is that we have very high achieving students. And so part of the reason we have such a great achievement gap is that the achievement gap is measured by the difference between the highest achieving students and the lowest achieving students. And so we have a large gap. There are some districts that don't have the high achievement that we have, and so they have a low achievement gap because they don't have that wide range of difference between the highest achieving and the lowest achieving students, whereas we do in Novi. So this is there's lots of information. There's lots of ways to slice and dice it, but this is the current way that the state of Michigan slices and dices it. In some ways, I don't think it gives a picture of our schools, but as Dr. Weber said, the bottom line for us is that when you look at the top to bottom rankings, we're in the top 5%. Every one of our schools is in the top 5% of schools in the state of Michigan.
Yeah, which is a tremendous accomplishment for our district. And certainly we are very thankful to our parents that they do value education that shows up in so many different ways, whether it's getting kids to school or supporting different programs or our bond, which I know we're going to be talking about some of that stuff later, that is just all stuff that our parents are a big part of. So we are very thankful for that. Anybody else have additional questions, comments? All right, well, we will move on to our consent agenda items. We have 3 consent agenda items on our agenda this evening: the approval of minutes, the approval of bills, and then 3 field trips: a 1-act competitive play competition, the First Robotics 2017 competition, and the MASC State Conference. To entertain a motion. Mrs. Glebzinski,
I move to accept consent items A, B, and C as presented.
do I have support?
Support.
It's been moved by Mrs. Glebzinski and supported by Mr. Mena. Do we have any questions, comments about the consent agenda this evening? Mr. Cook?
Just one thing that we need to get updated is on the bottom of our minutes. We have a box that says if you to view the video, to go to the school board's webpage and to click on a link that is no longer available.
It's a good point.
So could we get that updated just to say that to follow this, the link, the website's still live, but we need to get that updated. That's all.
Good point, Mr. Cook.
Thanks for bringing that to their attention. Anything else under comments? All right, I will call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Next, we have our action items. Our first item, Dr. Matthews, I turn to you for the personnel report.
Thank you, Ms. Murphy, and I will turn to Ms. Diglio.
Thank you, Dr. Matthews. I have 3 recommendations for hire and 1 for retirement, 1 for resignation. Carol Chappett is going to be serving as a media center paraprofessional. She's coming to us from a recall. She was laid off as part of our tech layoff earlier or in June last year, so we're able to recall her into that position. Stacy Jobe, it is pronounced Jobe. She is going to be serving as the secretary at VO. She's a new hire, and Miss Amy Hepp moved from VO over to Meadows. So that's the purpose for that. And then we have Benita Nera, who's going to be serving as a math teacher at the high school. And retiring is Denise Karkashian from the middle school, and Michelle Thomas, who is a transportation assistant in transportation, is resigning.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion. Mr. Mena?
Move to adopt personnel recommendations as presented.
I support. It's been moved by Mr. Mena and supported by Mrs. Hood. Do we have questions or comments for Ms. Diglio on the personnel report? Mr. Cook?
I see we have a resignation of a transportation assistant, so I kind of went back through some of the previous personnel reports, and it seems like we have quite a few names in transportation assistant. How many transportation assistants do we actually have?
We have 3 assistants and 1 sub. It's all related to, these relate with special needs students. So it's all driven by the number of special needs students. So we have 3 full-time and then 1 substitute.
Primarily, they'll ride the bus to support those special needs students and
Out of district.
out of district when they go to the center programs around the county.
Hazel Park and Birmingham, things like that, correct.
Additional comments or questions? I do want to just thank Mrs. Karakashian because it looks like she's retiring at the end of the school year, and she's giving our district time
Plenty
to
of
plan
notice.
for her replacement, and I know that that's something that is desirable from a
correct.
human resource perspective, so we appreciate that. All right, it's been moved and supported. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Now we come to our second opportunity for comments from the audience. This is an opportunity for anyone.
No.
Oh my goodness! I completely.
Wow.
Steve, I apologize.
We can just stop all the projects.
That's okay. We have some ratifications coming up, so I will turn to you, Dr. Matthews. Boy, I thought that was a short meeting.
Thank you, Ms. Murphy. And I will turn to Mr. Barr, who will report. He has two reports on our bond sale and our bond refunding. The first report tonight is on our bond sale. Mr. Barr.
Thank you. Taking the podium is Mr. Christopher Amarino, our lead counsel from Troon Law Firm. We have two ratifications for your consideration tonight. Last week we had our bond sale, which was a combination of the third series of bonds from the 2014 bond that was approved in May of 14 and a bond refunding of over $23 million. The first resolution before you tonight is the third series from our 2014 bond. This is our final series. If you remember, we were approved for $70.9 million. We issued $50 million in 2014, just over $6 million in last year, and the balance this year. So this will be the balance of our bonds. And I will tell you, after tonight with this and the refunding, we really have no more bonds to sell or anything else left to refund. So I will turn over to Mr. Amarino, who will briefly show you some of the important points of the resolution that you have to consider tonight.
Good evening. Christopher Amarino with Troon Law Firm. Pleasure to be back here again in front of your board. What I'd like to do is focus on the resolution relative to the Series 3 new money bond issue. The resolution, and there are two resolutions this evening. This first one that I'm going to talk about is set up very similar to the second. So I'd like to go through a little more detail on the first one, and it'll be a little more abbreviated on the second. With respect to this new money resolution, the whereas section basically describes how we got to where we are this evening. Identifies that back on November 3, this board approved a resolution authorizing the administration to go out and seek pricing on the bonds, and if the pricing met the parameters that you set in that resolution, to go forward and execute what's called a bond purchase agreement. Also identifies that the underwriter was to be Stiefel Nicholas and Company, and finally it identifies that Stiefel did present a proposal to the administration. It satisfied your parameters, so the superintendent therefore executed that bond purchase agreement. Then we get into the operative sections. The first paragraph of the operative section, and the now therefore be it resolved portion of the resolution, identifies all of the particular dollar values relative to the bond issue. Identifies the par amount, the original issue premium, the underwriter's discount, and also identifies what the bonds are going to be called. And as Mr. Barr identified, these are your Series 3 2017 school building and site bonds. Second paragraph identifies the structure of the issue, identifies that these will be dated on February 22. That will be the day funds are received by the district. Your maturities are running from 2019 through 2037. You will see that attached as Exhibit A to the resolution, there is a schedule that describes each of those maturities. If you flip the page to paragraph 3, it talks about the ability to call these bonds early. Bonds maturing on or after May 1, 2028 may be redeemed prior to maturity or refunded. And so that's the standard 10-year call that is typical for municipal bonds. Paragraph 4 identifies that there's going to be a redemption process if bonds are called early. If I'm going to ask you then to turn the page, the next significant paragraph I want to touch on is paragraph 7. Paragraph 7 describes how the funds will be handled on the 22nd of February. 7A identifies the cost of issuance that are going to be paid out of the bond proceeds. Section 7B identifies the monies that will be deposited into the capital projects account. And then those are the monies available to spend for that third and final series. The next two paragraphs address what we call the official statement. This is a copy of the preliminary official statement. This is a financial prospectus that gives investors understanding of what your economic and financial condition is, both for your school district and the community at large. And this document is really very important in achieving the pricing And I want to tip the hat to your administration, who put in a lot of effort to get this document together, and it really is critical to the pricing. Otherwise, the resolution identifies in paragraph 10 that the Huntington National Bank is going to be your paying agent. That's the resolution that we ask the board to consider this evening. I would ask that if a vote will be taken on this, that a roll call vote be used so we can verify that we in fact have a majority vote.
I'd like to point out on the sale of the bonds were received very well by the market. The average, or true interest cost they call it, for the bonds for the Series 3 is approximately 3%. These are over 20 years. You'll hear in a moment about the refunding, which is approximately 2%, so those are only over the next 5 years or so. But they were well received by the market. It obviously helped having a very stable bond rating because we have a reasonable fund balance, we have a growing enrollment, we have a good city, we have good employers, we have good staff, and a great school district. So all those things come together to make it favorable to the market and give us good pricing, which we'll talk about the effect of that in a few moments. Any questions?
Well, can we, since it's an action item, I'd like to take a motion first, and then we'll have discussion and questions. Mrs. Klubzinski.
I move that in the best interest of the district, we adopt the attached ratifying resolution.
Is there support? It's been moved by Mrs. Klubzinski and supported by Mrs. Hood. Are there questions, comments for Mr. Barr or the attorney? No questions? Okay, well, I will ask for a roll call vote. Mr. Mena?
Trustee Cook?
Yes.
Trustee Goldinsky?
Yes.
Trustee Hood?
Yes.
Trustee Mena, yes. Trustee Murphy?
Yes?
Trustee O'Connor?
Yes.
All right, motion carries 6-0. All right, and so we will move on to our next ratification.
And the next ratification is of our bond refunding, and I will again turn to Mr. Barr.
We also, the same day, decided to refund, because it was advantageous to the school district and the taxpayers, over $23 million of bonds that were from 2007. Many of you, we've spoken about over the last 5 or 6 years, have refunded your house or refinanced your house. It's kind of the same thing, we just put a few more zeros after it. Since 2012, we have refinanced or refunded $56,250,000 of bonds. It's been a good market. We know what it was like in 2007, 8, 9, 10. So where it was advantageous and the bonds are callable, we look to our financial consultants from Stutter Barch at the time, now PFM, to assist us with this, and they give us all the advice and say it's a good time to go. So we've issued $56 million of refunded bonds, combined with the $70.9 million. Or we have issued over $127 million of bonds in the last 5 years. That's how much we've actually gone to market with, which is quite a lot of money. This refunding, which I think Mr. Amarino mentioned, will save the taxpayers over $1.3 million. This refunding, combined with other refundings, and again, this refunding will be paid off in 2022, just as it originally was going to be. So in 5 years, it will be paid off, these bonds. This refunding, combined with other things, I will guarantee you that this coming summer, your tax bill will go down. We will have a decline in the tax rate of at least $500,000, which is good. Again, just like your house, if you did refinanced it, you kept it with the right number of years, your interest rate goes down, your payment goes down, same type thing. Again, interest rates going down, the market going up, and the taxable values in the community going up at a reasonable rate. So taxpayers this summer, when they get their tax bill, I believe in July, will see a decrease, if the board approves it, which I think you will, in June, of at least half of $1 million, which is fabulous news. And that's all been kind of part of the master plan going forward. Mr. Imerino, the refunding resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Barr. As I mentioned, this is set up very similarly to the one that you just considered. I'll be a little bit more brief on this one. The whereas section again describes how we got to where we are today. Paragraph 1 in the operative paragraphs identifies the dollar values associated with the issue. Paragraph 2 describes that maturity schedule that Mr. Barr was referencing a moment ago, where bonds will begin 2018 and be paid off 2022. There is a schedule, Exhibit A, which does lay those out. If you flip the page, paragraph 3, I do want to point out, paragraph 3 identifies that these bonds are not callable prior to maturity. There won't be an opportunity to refund these because it's less than 10 years, and as I mentioned a moment ago, standard for municipal bonds is a 10-year non-call period. If these don't go out longer than 10 years, there will not be an opportunity to call these. Paragraph 5 is unique to this resolution. It does identify that the Huntington National Bank is going to be your escrow agent. Escrow agent takes the monies in hand on the 22nd of February, invests them for you, holds them until the old bonds can be paid off. So that's what the escrow agent does. And Huntington Bank, who's also your paying agent, is serving as your escrow agent. The dollar values set forth in 6A and 6B identify the cost of issuance and then the amount that's going into your escrow fund, respectively. The only other key paragraph that's unique here, I want to point out paragraph 13. There's a slight adjustment to the allocation of your debt millage for the 2016 debt levy. There's an Exhibit B that's attached to the resolution that lays that out. That's on recommendation of PFM, your financial advisor. One last thing I would like to point out, Mr. Barr did mention an approximate $1.3 million worth of savings because of this issue. That is not money that goes into the general fund. That's money that the taxpayers realize over that 5-year period in less millage paid. It hits approximately 5.227% of present value savings. The general target to go forward with the refunder is between 2 and 3%.
Wow. So
you've beaten that by at least 2 times. So that's why your financial advisor recommended that you proceed with this issue.
Again, the interest rate on these bonds was averaged out to be only about 2%. It's a short life. It's only 5 years. I'd like to again remind you that our bond rating is fabulous. There are only 3 school districts around that have in this area that have a higher bond rating than Novi schools. Birmingham and Bloomfield, they also receive over $3,000 more per student than we do. And Oakland Schools, who has either 17 or 20% fund balance. Those are the 3 districts that have, and you can go, I think I sent to you previously, the bond ratings of other school districts and municipalities, and even Ford, GM, and Chrysler. And it's pretty shocking to see what's happened to some of those ratings in addition to other school districts. And these days, it's good just to hold steady.
Great. Thank you. I'll entertain a motion. Mr. Mena?
I move that the board, in the best interest of the district, adopt the attached ratifying resolution.
Support.
It's been moved by Mr. Mena and supported by Mr. O'Connor. May I have a roll call vote, Mr. Mena?
Trustee Cook?
Yes.
Trustee Glodzinski?
Oh, I'm so sorry. Wait.
Don't worry about it. We'll get it afterwards.
Okay. Go ahead.
Trustee Glodzinski?
Yes.
Trustee Hood?
Yes.
Trustee Mena, yes. Trustee Murphy?
Yes.
Trustee O'Connor?
Yes.
Ayes have it, 6-0.
And Mr. Cook has a question.
Not a question, more of a comment.
Oh.
I'd like to thank Mr. Emerito and Mr. Barr, along with PFM, for their diligence on this and the ability to say that we're going to lower taxes for the community is something I think a lot of our community members who may or may not have students in the district have been waiting for a long time. So thank you very much for doing that and saving the district money and saving the community some money. Thank you.
Our pleasure. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah. And thank you for being here as well. Next, we'll move on to Technology Bid Package 14. Dr. Matthews.
Thank you, Ms. Murphy. This was a bid package that was presented to the board on January 19th, and so I'll turn to Mr. Barr to summarize it for the board.
Going backwards again. Before you is the recommendation for award for the printers, bid package number 14. This was brought to you a couple weeks ago for review. The recommendation is to award this to C-High Computer Products in the amount of $137,615. The memorandum from IDS, along with the bid tabulation, is attached. If you have any questions, we will be happy to entertain them.
I have a motion.
I can make the motion.
Okay, thank you.
I move that in the best interest of the Novi Community School District, the bid for printer upgrades be awarded to probably didn't say that right, Computer Products in the amount of $137,615, contingent upon successful contract negotiations. Further, that the Assistant Superintendent of Business and Operations be authorized to expend the funds from the 2014 Capital Projects Fund.
Do I have support? I support. Okay, it's been moved by Mrs. Glebzinski and supported by Mrs. Hood. Are there questions for Mr. Barr? Mr. Cook?
Actually, last year we did the printers, right? Or no, the
We
copiers.
did some copiers.
Some copiers.
We did
So
other
this
copier-
year we're doing the balance of them, and
No, this is printers. This was like more like a desktop traditional print. This is not
Okay.
copiers.
Yeah. Okay. Pretty much done with upgrading
Printing
printers.
devices.
Yes.
We have devices that we replaced, I think in 2013. They were new the high-speed copiers. I could picture maybe a couple of years those could be replaced if there's money left in the bond, but otherwise, printing devices are in good shape right now.
All right. I have a motion. I'd like to call the question. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 6-0. All right. Well, next we have the superintendent's report.
No, now you get comments from the audience.
Oh my goodness. I'm sorry. Now we have comments from the audience. Seeing no one step to the podium eagerly, we will move on to, I was eager for the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Ms. Murphy. As we presented this evening, the Michigan Department of Education recently released the state's top-to-bottom ranking, which has been required to do so as part of the state accountability framework. There were 2,718 schools listed. It's worth repeating that all Novi schools ranked in the top 5% of all schools in the state of Michigan. In 2011-12, these were the, and 2015-16, these are the comparative ratings of our schools, their percentile rank. Deerfield was at 99th percentile in 2011-12, and they're continuing to be at the, in 2015-16 at the 99th percentile. Novi Woods was 98, and again this year 98. Orchard Hills was at the 65th percentile in 2011-12, and this year they're at the 95th percentile. Parkview was at the 95th percentile, and this year they're at the 97th percentile. Village Oaks was at the 90th percentile, and this year they're at the 95th percentile. Meadows was at the 82nd percentile, and this year they're at the 98th percentile. Novi Middle School was at the 66th percentile, and this year they're at the 96th percentile. And Novi High School was at the 77th percentile, and this year they're at the 96th percentile. So over the last 5 years, 5+ years, we've seen some significant improvement. And this progress is a testament to the hard work of our teachers in building principals and our community. Their focus on improving curriculum, improving our assessments, ensuring that we focus on every child every day has made a tremendous difference in continuing to improve the already high quality of our education. In addition, the focus that Dr. Weber has brought to the Office of Academics has enabled our teaching staff to build on their success and increase their effectiveness. And this progress has been made as our district has continued to grow more diverse. We currently, in 2011, we had 6,306 students, and this year we have just over 6,500 students. Our district had 58% of our students were white in 2011-12. This year there's 47% of our students are white. We had 30% Asian in 2011-12, and this year we have 39% Asian. Our African American population is 9% in 2011-12 and 8% this year, and our Hispanic has gone from 2% to 3% in the last 5+ years. On Saturday, February 11th, elementary students who have elected to participate will be participating in the Jump Rope for Heart event at Novi High School. This is a fundraiser for the American Heart Association that has been done individually at many of our schools in the past. This year there will be a combined effort that begins at 8:30 a.m. at Novi High School. I would encourage the board, if you're able to come and visit and perhaps even participate if you would like to. I'm sure that we could find a spare jump rope lying around. Last week at the Superintendent's Conference in Grand Rapids, Dr. Weber and I had a conference presentation on our new makerspace efforts in our K-6 buildings. These efforts provide exposure to the design process and the opportunity for our students to create and make within our elementary schools. The plan is to continue the development of design and making concepts into middle school and to support some of that work that has continued at the high school. This spring we'll be doing an assessment of our creativity kits and makerspace efforts this year to identify their impact and how we can continue to develop this strand within our program. In addition, I was invited to address the General Assembly. My message dealt with our makerspaces, but focused on the importance of giving our students opportunities to fail, try again, fail again, and finally find success. The best example I had of this was a group of Meadows students who had to try 6 times before they were successful in printing a 3D scale model of a desk over at Meadows. Last Sunday, I was able to attend the Japanese Business Society of Detroit's annual New Year's celebration at the Suburban Showplace. At the event, I was able to speak with Lieutenant Governor Brian Calley and exchange business cards. I encouraged him to look at Novi as a partner and as an organization that could provide feedback as he works in his area of special interest, which is special education advocacy. Alice Smith, our coordinator of title programs, Bob Stee, our community education director, and Julie Farmer, who's an English language learner teacher at Parkview, were also in attendance. And finally, the Novi Middle School Theater presents The Music Man on February 17th at 7:30 p.m. The cost of a ticket to get in the door is $7 a person, and we would encourage you to attend. Ms. Burkhart does a wonderful job with the theater program at Novi Middle School. Again, it's The Music Man on February 17th at Novi Middle School starting at 7:30 p.m. And that's my report this evening.
Thank you. Do you have any questions for Dr. Matthews on the report? Right. Okay, next we come to board communication. Do you have any board members that have communication, things that they've attended in the community? Mr. Cook?
Well, not that I've attended, but a couple of upcoming events. The Special Education Parents Advisory Committee is hosting a seminar next Thursday here at the ESB. It is entitled Supporting Different Learners, Students with Learning Challenges, Health Concerns, and Disabilities. And it's for anybody who has confusion about the IEP process or has questions about the Section 504 plans. This should be a wealth of information for you because it's put on by the Oakland schools. Also, the Special Education Parent Advisory Committee is announced this year that they're going to have a new award, and that's their Above and Beyond Award. If you know anybody that is involved with the special education or helps out with special education, can be a student, can be a parent, can be a community member, and anybody, you're more than welcome to nominate them. You can get to the nomination form by going to the website for the district under this Special Education Parents Advisory Committee. On their page, they have literature attachments, and click on that link and you can find the flyer for the Above and Beyond Award. Deadline for application or for nominations is February 17th. So that's coming up in a couple of weeks. And like I say, these are the people who go above and beyond what is expected of them to help our special ed kids. So, and actually everybody, I do believe everybody who gets nominated will get recognized, but they are going to pick out a few different winners in each category that they decide.
Thank you, Mr. Cook. Other board communication, Mrs. Lubzinski.
Yeah. The Governance and Policy Committee met January 31st. Mr. Mena, Mrs. Murphy, and myself are on the committee. Also attending the meeting were Dr. Matthews and Ms. Diglio. We had a robust agenda. We started out by looking at some of the governance documents that we currently have in place, our standards of practice and our decision-making process. And through that discussion, Dr. Matthews took it upon himself to help us organize those documents and combine them with operating procedures that Mrs. Murphy has been drawing together, and I want to thank you for already giving us a draft of that so we can move forward to document the way that we operate as a board. So those are out there for comment, and then eventually we'll be discussing them as the entire board. So the committee's just trying to pull it together for all of you. We discussed a number of policies, and the first one, employment of professional staff. Ms. Diglio and Dr. Matthews are going to gather some additional information to bring back to the committee. We discussed legal counsel. That was something that some question was brought up at a previous meeting, and Mr. Mena's identified some legal counsel that specializes in school district law, and will be getting a presentation. The committee will be receiving a presentation from 4 different firms and getting back to the entire board about that. We talked quite a bit about social media, and we seem to have policies in place, but the implementation of those policies we need to work on. Mrs. Murphy, we talked about agenda items and how things get on the agenda, and that's getting incorporated in the board operating procedures. We talked about reporting out of committees, which is what I'm doing now. In addition to reporting out to the board, we'll also be preparing minutes that'll be posted in board book. We talked about student fundraising. There had been some questions raised about that, and we're going to follow through with that. I am going to be searching information for operation procedures and conduct procedures, because currently we have nothing in our policies in those areas. So I'm going to be gathering information from what other districts have. And there were some new Neola policies that were in the book, but due to time we didn't get to, and I understand there is some urgency because of the subject matter in those. So Mrs. Holly will be contacting the committee members to meet potentially on February 13th or 14th, so we can get through that. And also, if you had an action item that you took ownership, then it'd be appropriate to be prepared for that meeting to discuss it. Are there questions from the board? Yes.
You stated these will be posted in board book?
The minutes will be,
yes.
they're draft right now. I need feedback from Dr. Matthews and Mrs. Murphy. I'm guessing by the end of the day tomorrow you'll be able to see those.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Other board communication? All right, seeing none, we do have need for an executive session under 8A to consider a complaint about an employee, and I have a note from the employee requesting a closed session, so I'll entertain a motion.
I move that we go into closed session for section 8A.
Okay, I have a motion from Mrs. Glubzinski. Do I have support?
I'll support.
It's been moved by Mrs. Glubzinski and supported by Mrs. Hood. We go into executive session. We will return from the closed session, but we'll be taking any other action this evening. I believe we need a roll call vote to go into closed session. Mr. Mena?
Trustee Cook?
Yes.
Trustee Glubzinski?
Yes.
Trustee Hood?
Yes.
Trustee Mena? Yes. Trustee Murphy?
Yes.
Trustee O'Connor?
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0. We will move into we will take a 10-minute break, and then we'll move into the executive session in the board conference room.
Thank you.